Let me start by saying welcome.
Thank you.
Would you say, so that we have you identifying yourself on tape, your name and who you are? Just introduce yourself.
I'm Salman Rushdie, and I'm a writer, and I'm the author of a memoir called Knife, which I'm here to talk about.
I am looking forward to speaking with you about it. And I think I want to begin exactly where you do in the book with the day of your attack. I don't see a way to improve on the way you have told it yourself. So would you read us just the very beginning?
Okay, here we go. At a quarter to 11 on August the 12th, 2022, on a sunny Friday morning in upstate New York, I was attacked and almost killed by a young man with a knife just after I came out on stage at the amphitheater in Chautauqua to talk about the importance of keeping riders safe from harm.
So much packed into that sentence. Take me to that moment. I want to understand when you understood that something was going badly wrong.
Well, actually, I understood almost immediately. The funny thing was that I was there not even to talk about my own work or anything. I was there because the person on the stage with me, Henry Reese, had for the previous 20 years developed this program of refuge spaces for riders in Pittsburgh.
Okay.
He had his whole little street in Pittsburgh of houses that he and his wife had managed to acquire, in which they could house like half a dozen writers and their families. A street called Sampsonia Way. And so it was like the 20th anniversary of that. And he had been inspired to do that by a talk that I'd given in Pittsburgh all those years ago about how I had been, along with a group of other writers, involved in starting up a project which is now called the International Cities of Refuge Network, which has places all over Buenos Aires, Stockholm, all over the place. And he wanted Pittsburgh to be one of those cities. So he got inspired by my talk to start. So we were there to talk about him. And we never got to have the talk because I saw this man rise out of the audience. And
You're at the lectern at this point. You stepped on
no,
the
we
stage?
were sitting in chairs on the stage with a little table between us. And this man got up out of the audience and came towards the stage. There's a few steps up. The stage is slightly raised, so there are a few steps up. And then he started sprinting. He sprinted up the steps and came at me. And I immediately thought, oh, it's actually happening.
Explain what that means. It's actually happening.
Well, the threat of that happening had been present for ever since February 1989, when the Ayatollah Khomeini first launched his death threat. And
this was the fatwa ordering or calling on Muslims to kill you.
To kill me. And for a long time, it was very dangerous because the Iranian state itself was trying to carry out the threat. So these were professional assassins. And in those days, I was living in England and had sort of police protection 24 hours and so on. But then by about around the turn of the century, the British and the Iranians came to an agreement which essentially called off the dogs. And ever since then, there really hasn't been much risk.
You've gone about your life.
I came to live in New York. I came to live in New York early in the year 2000, and I've been here ever since. And I've done hundreds of public events, talks, readings, lectures, discussions, without there ever being the faintest murmur of a problem. And so I had really come to feel that, okay, this is ancient history.
But on that day, your first thought was, okay, it's you. You're here finally.
You are. It felt like it. I say in the book something to the effect that it felt like he was a time traveler, somebody emerging out of the past.
Who you'd been waiting for.
Who I had for a time had been wondering if I would actually get to see. And then I'd actually forgotten about him. But then he showed up. You
write that you have since had all these questions. Why didn't I fight? Why didn't I run? Have you arrived at an answer to those?
Well, it all happened quite quickly. There's that. And I don't really have an answer, except that what happens is in the face of really unexpected violence, I think maybe we all have this. We don't know how to act in the moment. We don't know what is the best thing to do, and so I just froze, you know. And then he came in. I thought he hit me. I didn't. I never saw the knife. He hit me very hard on the point of the jaw, here, around here. And I remember thinking, I think he may have broken my jaw. I didn't realize that there was a weapon in his hand until I saw the blood coming out.
How many times did he stab you?
I've been trying to work it out. I mean, I think it's at least 12. It might be 13 or 14. I keep trying to count them and I lose count.
You describe lying on the floor. You're in a huge pool of your own blood, and that your overwhelming emotion, it wasn't fear, it wasn't pain, it was extreme loneliness.
Yeah, because I thought, here I am in the middle of, upstate New York, almost in Canada, very far from everyone I love, dying as I thought I was dying in the company of strangers. And that felt
on a stage.
On a stage. Yeah. That felt worse than the dying, that it was framed in that way. And I mean, I'm lucky that I got away with it. I think I'm very lucky that I got away with it, because the odds against my surviving were very great. As the doctors, I was lucky for a start that there was this trauma hospital just across the state line in Pennsylvania that in a helicopter was quite close. That was what, because there was nothing else for a long distance.
Yeah. And you were saved, I should just inject. There was no security there,
no
right?
security.
It was
No.
people in the audience got up.
Henry Reese himself, who was on stage with me, first came to my defense, and then people from the audience jumped up and helped him. And I mean, if that was not the case, I would not be sitting here talking to you. I mean, these are the people who, because he wasn't planning to stop. They dragged him off me and stopped him. And yeah, then I was lucky that there was a trauma hospital very close by. I mean, I was lucky that it was a sunny day. If it had been rainy and stormy, the helicopter would not have been able to fly, and then I'd be dead.
There's something so odd about hearing you describe anything about that day as lucky. But yes.
Yeah, I mean, one of these surgeons who had worked on me, doctors, when they think you're going to be okay, they acquire a kind of black humor. And one of the surgeons who had operated on me said, first you were very unlucky and then you were very lucky. And I said, well, what's the lucky part? And he said, the lucky part is that the man who attacked you had no idea how to kill a man with a knife. And it's true. I mean, if you look at the injuries, they were basically, he was flailing around, just putting the knife everywhere he could think of. I mean, he came very close to killing me, but he didn't.
You never use his name,
yeah.
either now or in the book. You call him the A for what? The attacker, the assassin?
The attacker, the assailant, adversary, and ruder words that begin with A.
Okay. Leave that to people's imaginations.
I think most people can imagine it.
Why? Why not use his name?
Because I don't know. I remember a long time ago when I was living in England, Margaret Thatcher used to say about the IRA that she wanted to deny them the oxygen of publicity. And I thought, well, I think that too about this guy. I don't let him. He's had his 27 seconds in the limelight. Let him go back to being anonymous and nobody again.
You recount in the book, and I'll leave it to people to read, the long 2 steps forward, 1 step back of your recovery.
Mm-hmm.
You're sitting before me now.
Yeah.
April 2024. How are you?
I'm not so bad, thank you. I mean, there are things that are not going to get better. Like, I mean, my right eye is not coming back.
It was the worst of your wounds.
That was, yeah, because,
which is saying something.
Because the knife went all the way to the optic nerve. And if you damage the optic nerve, there's nothing to be done. And the left hand, I mean, it's better in the sense that I've got a lot of movement back.
Yeah, you're opening and closing your
I can do
fingers.
that. But there's still like almost no feeling in my middle two fingers here.
Can you type?
Well, it makes it much harder to use a keyboard. I was never actually a top touch typist. I was always using about 2 or 3 fingers, so it doesn't stop me that much. But yeah, so those two things, I mean, you know, I wake up and think about them the moment I wake up every day. But other than that, I mean, all this army of experts and specialists that I had to see all basically signed off and said that everything else seems to be healed. So, again, lucky.
So, you're alive.
I'm alive.
Your wounds were such that, as you have already suggested, you maybe shouldn't be.
Yeah.
How does that have you thinking? I mean, it's a miracle in a way. And you're someone who has
never believed in miracles.
Exactly. Where does that leave you?
Except my books believe in them. My books are full of them. So maybe my books allowed the miracles to cross over from fiction into fact. I mean, there are the thing that strikes me as the biggest, something like a miracle, is the fact that this eye injury did not also result in a brain injury. Because, you know, the optic nerve which was damaged is only a millimeter or two from the brain. And yet, I mean, I had a couple of brain scans and there's no injury to the brain. So what that means is that for whatever it's worth, I still have my brain. I'm still able to be me.
Has it changed your thinking at all in terms of faith, God? Is there a higher power out there that made sure I would get through this?
No, ma'am. I mean, one of the things that is interesting about that near-death experience is that there was nothing supernatural about it. You know, there were no choirs of angels, no tunnel of light, no lifting out of the body, no pearly gates or gates of hell. Nothing like that. It was just somebody physically lying on the ground, bleeding to death. And so I thought, well, that suggests to me that maybe I'm not wrong. What it does do, getting that close to death and then coming back from it, is it gives you an immensely increased sense of the value of every day of life.
Yeah, I can imagine.
Just immensely. Just you wake up in the morning and you think, still here, you know, and feels precious to have that experience. And that's why in somewhere in the book I quoted my old friend Raymond Carver, who was told by doctors that he had a very short time to live. And then he lived another 10 years and did a lot of his best work in that time. And he wrote this sweet poem called Gravy, where he said that all those years that seemed like gravy to him, you know. And I think that too. I think, you know, I've got some time that I wasn't supposed to have. And that makes you find it to be a treasure.
Go back to your writing again, because as people who've read your fiction will know well, all kinds of magical things do happen in your writing. Your characters do things that do not align in any way with reality or science. Plots develop in ways that do not track with reality or science. Why do you let yourself do things in writing that you don't allow yourself to believe in life?
Well, because I think that realism as a literary form is not a sufficient way to describe the craziness of the world. I think the world is insane, as we see every day on the news. And realism is a wonderful form, narrow and deeply grounded in character, but it doesn't allow you to accept that the world is now not realistic. The world is surreal. And surrealism seems to me to be closer to the real. That's what I think I'm doing.
You've just written a book that's real.
Yeah.
That's true.
Yeah.
Was that a struggle?
I just thought, you know, the thing is, when you have the idea for the book, or this book came to me in a different way, but when you have the idea for the book, it tells you what it needs. You know, and in the case of this book, it seemed quite clear that it should be first-person narrative, and that it should be as close to reportage as I could make it, especially in that part of it which deals with the attack and the recovery. After that, it does spiral away into being more kind of thoughtful. And then there's one chapter in it which is entirely fictional.
You invent a dialogue between yourself and the A.
Yeah, because I thought, what I thought all the way through was this is a book about three people. It's a book about me and my wife, who did so much to help me come through this, and him. And I thought, I read about this thing that had happened to Samuel Beckett, where he was stabbed and almost died. And he went to visit, he went to the trial of the man who had attacked him. And at the end of it, he went up to the man and he said, "Why do you do it?" And the man replied, what do you say? He said, "Je m'excuse, monsieur, je ne sais pas. I'm sorry, sir, I don't know," which is useless, tells you nothing. And so I thought there was a bit of me which wanted to go and ask this man in jail, "Why do you do it?" And I thought, I'm going to get something like that. I'm going to get either banality or some kind of cliched hostility. And either way, I don't learn anything. And I thought then, well, what might be better for me to do, for me, is to use my own gift, which is imagination, to try and imagine myself into his head and try and see what he might have been up to. Because I said to my publishers at Random House, I said, if I came to you with a character in a book who decided to murder somebody about whom he knew almost nothing, you would say to me, that's not good enough.
Not a compelling character.
No, not convincing. And yet that's exactly what did happen. So then I thought, how do I fill that gap? How can I try and imagine, as it were, the other reasons that made it something that this kid who had no record of criminal activity, who'd never been in trouble with the police, was on no kind of terrorist watch list, nothing. So to go from zero to murder, that's a hell of a decision. And to do that, to kill somebody that you know almost nothing about, is a mystery. I wanted to try and imagine my way into that mystery.
It's also a way of making your attacker smaller. You take his voice away from him.
Yeah, well, I'm in favor of that. The smaller he gets, the better for me.
Why couldn't you write fiction again till you had written this memoir of this attack?
It just seems stupid. I mean, I always have like a file of scraps of ideas and things that might be the next thing, and anyway, for several months, I wasn't really able to sit at my desk and think about anything. But then when I looked in that file, and I thought, this is just silly. This is foolish. If I write one of these stories, people are going to think, what's he up to? Why is he doing that? Why is he avoiding the point? And I would feel like I was avoiding the point. And then I realized that until I dealt with this, I really couldn't do anything else. And there was no way of dealing with this fictionally, because the point about this is that it actually happened. There's no way of fictionalizing it.
Is this you using what you do best, using language as your own knife in a way?
Yes, exactly. That's what the book is called Knife, not only because it's about a knife, but because it is a knife. I got myself into a knife fight somehow. I had to have a knife of my own.
There is a hero to this book. It's your wife.
Yes.
Eliza, who you married in 2021?
Yeah, 2 years. Yes, the year before.
You were in your 70s already.
Yeah.
What's that like, finding great love later in life?
It's a very interesting thing to find love late in life. I mean, after all sorts of vicissitudes. And I wasn't expecting it. In fact, I was actively not expecting it.
Would you tell the story?
Yeah. What happened
You
is
met her and you were so besotted and entranced that you managed to walk into a glass door?
I walked into a solid glass door. It was a literary party at the beginning of the Penn World Voices Festival. Roof terrace, sliding glass out onto the terrace. And I said, let's go out and look at the view. Nice summer evening. May Day, May the 1st.
Romantic.
And so she went out ahead of me and through the sliding door that was open. And I was so distracted that I didn't notice that the other half of the sliding door was shut. And so I walked wham into it and fell down, and my glasses cut my nose, and so there's blood coming down my nose. And it was very dramatic. And I was lying there thinking, do not pass out.
Hold yourself together.
Yeah, which I didn't. And then, later on, when this appalling attack happened, it seemed like that meeting with Eliza had been like a comic prefiguring of this, which also involved falling down, glasses cutting your nose, etc.
People staring down and
People
trying
staring
to help,
down
I'm
at
sure.
you. Yeah, exactly. So, but anyway, yes, that's how we met. It was in Hollywood, that would be called meeting cute.
Yeah.
And I got myself up and I thought, okay, I'm probably a bit shaky and I should probably go home. So I said, okay, I'm going to go and get a taxi and go home. So I went down. This was a roof terrace in the hotel. And I went down to the street level. And she came with me just to make sure. She was worried that I wasn't completely okay. So she came with me to make sure I was all right. And then we found a yellow cab. And then she got into the taxi with me, which would never have happened if I had not walked into the plate glass door. So, that worked.
Sounds like you don't believe in God, but you're not averse to fate playing a role, having a hand in
I
things.
think chance is a very important thing in human life. Everybody thinks that there's cause and effect, which there is, but there's also the intrusion of the random into our lives, which often pushes them down a road that they would never have been on. And certainly, I mean, I don't know, Eliza and I, we had got on very well. We might well have gone on seeing each other, and who knows. But the fact is that this comedy moment accelerated everything. And we've been together ever since. And that's 7 years ago.
You write in Knife about how for the 33 plus years since Ayatollah Khomeini issued the fatwa calling for your death, that you have fought against being defined as the guy with the fatwa on him. And that you've come to realize no matter what you do, no matter how glorious a book you have ever written or ever will write, this is what you'll be known for. And now additionally as the guy who got knifed.
Yeah, I know. This is the big damage to my work as a writer.
Is it? Because it seems like you're making lemonade out of lemons here.
Well, I'm trying to do that, but I spent most of 50 years of my life trying to be a novelist, and what this whole episode from 1989 until now has done is in a way to turn people's attention away from my novels, and some of them are quite good, and I would like people to have a look at them. And that frustrates me, that for many people, this subject is so, because it's a big news subject, it's so prominent in people's minds that what my books are like is somewhere further to the back of their interest.
Although it's also possible that a whole new generation picked up the satanic verses because of this.
Yeah, that's possible.
Not that one would have wished that was the way they came to it.
I always tell people not to read that book first because it has too much baggage around it. I say read something else. Read the most recent novel, Victory City. Read Midnight Children back at the other end of my life. Read Haroun and the Sea of Stories, which I wrote for my young son. I mean, I think, when you've got 22 books sitting on a bookshelf, there's a lot of ways into a writer's life. And not to start with the thing that had the scandal around it, I think might be a good idea. You get to know the writer, see if you enjoy his work, and then maybe go to that book.
Does it still feel silly to think about going back to the fiction that you had percolating? Have you been able to do it?
I think I haven't started writing anything else yet. But yeah, I think there won't be any more nonfiction for a while. If I do anything else, it'll certainly be fiction.
Yeah. Do you feel safe now?
Well, I feel safe partly because, yes, I feel safe, and partly because we've been sensible. We've taken steps to make things safer. I mean, it's probably not a good idea to talk about security on the primetime media, but
We don't need to get into the details of your
but
whatever measures you may be taking.
there's a thing that has become significant again in a way that it hadn't been. So yeah, we're taking care.
Do you feel fear when you're walking down the sidewalk and somebody rushes up behind?
Not really. I mean, except that it's a dangerous city these days. But and I don't feel any extra. I mean, I do think that one of the things that appears to be the case, although I don't know until we have this endlessly delayed trial, is that
your attacker.
Yeah, he doesn't seem to have been part of any larger enterprise. He does seem to be a kind of lone wolf attacker. So his attack on me doesn't represent the resurgence of a large-scale problem. I think, but I may be wrong. That's what I think. And I have been told, because I have some contact still with security personnel in England as well as here, and they have told me that they don't see any threat against me cropping up on their radar.
I very much hope that is correct. Chapter 8 in this book is titled Closure with a question mark. And I want you to tell me about going back 13 months later to the exact place where you attacked. Yeah. Why do that to yourself?
Well, because it just became for me a kind of, I don't want to say obsession, but it became very important for me, I thought, to tell myself that I was standing up in the place where I fell down. And I just thought it would mean a lot to me. I mean, Eliza wasn't delighted about it.
She came with you, your wife?
Yeah, she said you're not going by yourself. But I was absolutely determined to do it. And then we had to wait because Chautauqua Institution has a whole summer program of events, talks and music and things, kind of Memorial Day to Labor Day. And then after that, they have weddings up there. So I asked for what was the first available date when I could just quietly come up. I said, I don't need to do anything. I just need to go to the place. And then initially, the date they offered me was, of all dates, September the 11th. I thought, oh, well, okay. But then weather intervened and that flight got canceled, and it actually went about a week later. And when I was standing on the stage, I mean, I shouldn't tell you because it spoils the end of the book, but when I was standing on the stage, I had this physical sense of somebody lifting a weight from my shoulders. It felt like somebody came and lifted a burden off me. And I said to Eliza, I said, I don't know why, but actually I feel lighter. And that's more than I had hoped that it would do, but that's what it did.
I love, too, you just told me you wanted to stand where you had fallen down.
Yeah.
You also talked about how alone you felt in the moment of the stabbing, and to go back and not be alone.
Not be alone was very important, because Eliza had never been there, so she didn't know what it looked like. So she'd had to imagine it. So for her to see it for real, that was difficult for her also. For both of us, I think it was an important moment.
Well, I will bring us to a close by noting yours is not a laugh out loud funny book on many levels, but I did laugh out loud as you're describing that scene of going back, standing where you had fallen down on that stage. And it seemed that one of the things that annoyed you most about being knifed and nearly murdered was that the dude ruined your suit.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes, I had a nice Ralph Lauren suit.
You're right. I stood where I had almost been killed wearing, I have to tell you, my new Ralph Lauren suit. Yeah. And you felt whole.
That was one of the things I did for myself to feel good.
The new suit worked.
The new suit worked.
Salman Rushdie, thank you.
Thank you. And yeah, I even got a discount.